everyone. You're watching SK Live. I'm Indranil Basu. Today we have India's best athlete with us. Well, we don't need to introduce him. He's our very own Abhinav Bindra. Abhinav, good to see you, and thanks a lot for coming on SK Live.
No, it's a pleasure. I know it's taken a while to come on, but I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for those kind words of introduction, those very warm words. Uh, I definitely don't think I am India's best athlete. I think I was an ordinary athlete who managed to do a few good things.
No. I don't agree with you. You have been very humble, very honorable, and very honest with your effort, and that's what makes you so special. Of course, your skill set is something we can speak about throughout the show, but you have been amazing. What a brand ambassador of the sport.
Oh, no, I mean, I just try to do my bit. I think, sport is a very unique field that we are all in. I think, sport really forces us to work hard. It teaches us honesty. It teaches us integrity. And sport is such a pure field. I think you have to have that purity of purpose if you want to succeed as an athlete. I don't think you will be able to succeed if you're dishonest with yourself. It's all about, looking yourself in the mirror every day and asking yourself the difficult questions. If you've done your best, have you put your best foot forward with all honesty and effort? And that is pretty much how I try to live my 20 odd years in my sports career. And I continue to live life with the same values that sport has taught me. I think sport is a wonderful teacher, and it continues to drive me. It continues to drive my purpose. It continues to help me lead my life. And I continue, even though I am now long retired from active sport. But I always do look back to sport when I'm in difficult moments and then see how I would have reacted as an athlete. And I always get good answers coming to deal with the crisis. So sport continues to be an integral part of me as a person.
That we all know, and what you're doing to sports, where you're contributing. We'll come to that later, but talking about 150 medals in 22-year career. When you look up early in the morning, when you look at yourself, I mean, how do you look back to at those days when you got them, and what a
Well,
celebration?
yeah. No, I think that's a good question. Now that I have retired from sport and I have exited my investment of sorts, and I can look at my career more dispassionately, and I can look at my career in sport more clearly. It is not the few medals that I won which hang on a wall, which I really remember, but what I do look back at and which continues to be special to me is basically the relationships that I built with people along the way in my sports career, and of course the memories that I have during my sports career. My career was full of ups and downs. I think, like most other athletes, I had more failure than I had success, but it was a great learning experience. It was something which taught me something about myself every day. As athletes, we are explorers. We continue to explore the ends of human performance, and that is pretty much what I tried to do in my career. And it was a great exploration of myself on how much I could push myself from one day to the other, finding the energy and finding the resolve, finding the determination um, to get going every day and to train, to do my best when nobody was watching. Um, it was a fantastic journey, and that is the journey is what I look back at with fondness and with clarity. I frankly don't look back at the few medals that I won. Those are my outcomes, and yes, they are pleasant outcomes and important outcomes, but they are not the most important in my priority list. What the most important things in my list, and when I look back, is again the relationships that I built, the people that I met, the relationships that I built with my coaches, the relationships I built with my competitors, the relationships that I built with my family as well, because My family was an integral part of my journey. So that those are the elements that I look back at, and I look back at with sincere fondness, but also gratitude that sport enabled me to meet these wonderful people, and sport enabled me to learn so much from various experiences, and of course, sport enabled me to learn so much from different people with different thought processes.
Absolutely. And these are the thought process you have, which has made you such an inspiration that after the 2008 Beijing Olympic gold, you've inspired so many people to take shooting. Shooting has become like a movement right now, and all because of to one gentleman, Mr. Abhinav Bindra.
No, I think we will continue to disagree a lot on this interview, because may have had a I may have had a little role to play in that. But I think, to be very honest, we've had a lot of success in the sport of shooting, and we've had several role models in the sport of shooting. So much success coming in, and of course, it is wonderful to see. And I think, um, it is all a result of everybody's efforts. I don't think you can singularly just make me the reason for the success. I think it was the sustained success that we are seeing is, of course, because of firstly the athletes. It's a success always belongs to the athletes and their individual pursuit, and the hard work that they put in. That is something which we have to, of course, continue to value. And yes, I am, of course, very proud and glad that I did have a little role to play in this evolution and revolution of the sport in India. And I'm so happy to see that the amount of success that we have at the moment is tremendous. So many young people taking to the sport, and so many young people having success at the world stage. I really do hope that continues, and we continue to have that global success. And of course, it continues to showcase in our Olympic medal tally, and we win more medals. That is what of course, like any other sports fan, I am just a fan now. I look forward to seeing.
That you have given us the most joyous moment to celebrate. In fact, Vijender Singh, one of the Olympic medalists, came on our show on SK Live, and he was categorical when this question was asked, which is the biggest moment, India's biggest moment in sport, and it was given that it was Bindra's gold medal, not 1983 World Cup. That was his version to it. So, what are your thoughts?
No, he's a kind person, and so happy and thankful that he had that view. But again, I think they were all good moments. I mean, 1983 was a big moment in our, of course, in our cricketing history, but also in our sporting landscapes. And all these global achievements that we've had in different sports and different events have a role to play in motivating society. I think, we often talk about, um, victories, and we all often talk about these medals and these gold medals, etc. But I think the success of sport is when, it has a impact on our young society, and when they are taken in by sport, because sport is something which is so unique to society. It is something which builds unity. It is something which builds solidarity. It builds sportsmanship in our people, and I think those are the real victories that sport brings forward. And all these events and outcomes that have happened in our sporting history all had a role to play in bringing these factors together, which are so very important in today's day and age, where the world is moving to a very different era, way. There is so much nationalism we see in the world. There is so much egoism that we see in the world, and sport is one field that remains pure and devoid of all of these. Sport continues to build solidarity, sport continues to build unity, and the power of sport is something which is very unique. And all these achievements that you just talked about, 83 World Cup, our several Olympic successes, and our other successes in various sporting events have all contributed towards this, and that is the real success that sport brings forward.
I mean, you're obviously the youngest athlete to represent India in Olympics, 2000 Sydney Games, Commonwealth Games. I mean, how was Bindra then, Abhinav then, that time, that phase? When you're young and raring to go, had all the energy you talked about. So how was that Bindra? I mean, that phase of your career early on.
Yes, I think yes. It was obviously the Olympics in Sydney, where it was a very important milestone in my career. It was my first Olympic experience, um, and of course I did well there. I finished 10th or 11th, something like that, just a point away from the Olympic final, and that performance for me personally gave me a lot of inner belief that I had it in me to one day. Um, Stand up on this global stage and be the best in the world. So that the games in Sydney were critical in my sporting career. Of course, the games in Sydney were also special because I was a very young athlete. I think I was 17 at that time, and um, I went to this great event, which is the Olympic Games, the most romanticized platform in global sport. And the aura of the Olympics is so special that it only motivated me to push myself harder, to work harder to achieve my goal, which was to win a gold medal at the Olympic Games. It was a fantastic experience. Of course, I was also like a little boy in a candy store, with all these famous athletes all around me, having that experience of living in an Olympic village, which I think is again a very, very unique experience because you have uh, people from 206 nations, 200 representing 206 national Olympic committees, all living together peacefully, fighting it out for a global sporting prize. Um, and which is very unique. I mean, there is a very unique atmosphere of an Olympic village life, which is so experiential. It's so hard for me to even put it into words. But that was something which is very special. And of course, what I remember from the Olympics in Sydney, those were Sydney and Rio were the only two Olympic Games where I attended the opening ceremony. And of course, marching into this massive stadium is again such a unique experience, and it is such a um, so much you have so much positive adrenaline when you walk into the stadium with thousands of people egging you on. Um, it is a very special experience, and Sydney, I think, was one of my favorite Olympics. I think it was a very special Olympics. The atmosphere of the games was special. I think it was held in Australia, where the people, I think, are very sporting in nature, and events of the magnitude of an Olympic Games only come to life with the atmosphere that the people of the city create. And they're the Australians special because they all have such a positive association with sport. So you could feel that, and it was very great.
It was quite a moment. I mean, the way you carried yourself all throughout, and we just had a sort of feeling that shooting doesn't need that kind of fitness. It does need so much of mental and physical coordination and the kind of training which goes in. Can you just tell us, I mean, a little bit about how you manage that? That sort of it's not a physical sport as much as like football or a contact sport, but it's a skill set sport. You need a lot of skills you need to do well at that level, and the margin of error is so less to be a successful shooter. And can I mean, take us through that bit of your journey when you really worked hard on
Yes.
your fitness?
Yeah, so it is, of course, shooting doesn't come to, you don't see it as a very physical sport, but in fact, it is a very physical sport. The human body is actually built to move, and the human body is not built to stay still. And shooting is a sport which requires so much stillness of body and so much stillness of mind. which is very hard to achieve physically. So, in order for you to coordinate your body to remain so still and so balanced, is actually a very physically taxing endeavor. When you are in an Olympic final, and when you have the stress of an Olympic final, and when you have so much adrenaline and your heart rate shoots to 180, and you have to manage to shoot in between heartbeats, it is a very physical sport. It is a very violent sport internally. It might not You might not be able to see it from outside as a spectator, because maybe shooting athletes have great poker faces and we all look very calm and composed. But
Yeah, yeah.
in reality, internally, there is a lot going on. And in order to achieve this mental strength, which is often talked about in our sport, you can only achieve that mental strength if you are physically in shape. And that mental strength only comes from your physical being. So, of course, during parts of my career, I started off as an athlete with my physical fitness being my greatest weakness. And I really worked on it. There was a time when I was running 10 kilometers about 5, 6 times a week, every day. I did spend hours and hours doing so much work for balance and for stability. I trained world over trying to get the best experts in place. And towards the end of my career, of course, there was an element of physical training for performance enhancement, but there was also an element of physical training for injury prevention and injury management. Because when you have a career in sport, which is 22 years, your body is bound to have imbalances, and those imbalances then come in your way. It comes in your way for your health, and it comes in your way for performance. So you also have to spend a lot of time and effort doing a lot of physical work just to maintain your body to achieve status quo, and be par for the course. So that also takes away a lot of time and a lot of energy. But these are the different elements that had to be continuously worked on. Shooting is a very asymmetrical sport, and the posture, at least in my event, is one which is very unnatural and puts a lot of physical stress on your spine. So it requires a lot of corrective work, but also for performance enhancement, it requires a great amount of effort and work to get your body completely coordinated. It is not a sport which requires brutal strength or anything like that, but it is a sport which requires everything to work at extreme efficiency. Shooting is a very unique sport because, unlike a few other sports, you can never win at 80%. In a
Yeah.
few other events which are man to man, and you're playing against just one competitor in a match, a lot is also dependent on how the other person, your competitor, is having, what sort of a day the other person is having. But in our sport of shooting, you have to be at 100% or 110% to stand a chance to win. So it is a sport of perfection, and it, of course, also requires your body to be working in a great degree of efficiency, um, to be able to achieve that stillness of mind and to be able to come close of achieving that stillness of body.
Absolutely. And that's the reason you, touch wood, you still look fit. You've carried that tradition. I'm sure you still do a lot of physical exercise to keep yourself in shape, isn't it?
No, I only do half an hour to 40 minutes a day, but I do try to do 10,000 steps every day religiously, and that's all what I do. But that's good enough. But of course, a degree of more. I look after my basic activity every day, physical activity, and I look a lot after the quality of my sleep. I think because recovery is something, as in sport, which is so very important for everybody for health, and sleep is something which people often ignore and take for granted. So these are just the two very basic elements that I look at. I don't do anything special, but I just do try and do everything moderately. I don't eat pre. I don't eat no everything, but in normal proportions. But it is all about finding that balance in your body and finding that balance in your mind.
Abhinav, is there any specific age for a shooter to retire from the highest level?
No, I
When
think
you retire, you could do much more when you retired. We thought you could do much more.
Well, I retired at age 35, and I think maybe I could have gone more for a few years. But that is such a personal decision. It is such a decision which you have to look from within yourself, that whether you have it in yourself to show up every morning with that enthusiasm and that energy that you had when you started off. And it is something which has to a decision which has to come very internally. Shooting, of course, has also evolved over the years. The rules of the game have changed, um, and the current rules, I would say, favor a younger athlete more. So it has become a little bit more younger person's sport. If you see the age of winning athletes who are winning medals is pretty young and pretty low, because you just have that little bit of better reaction time, which with age goes away a little bit. Um, but I think those are all elements which can be compensated. The most important thing is whether you have that purpose and that enthusiasm and that motivation which comes from within. And if you have it, then you can even prolong it, and you can even go further to your 40s. We've had athletes who have won Olympic medals in their 40s. So it is again a very personal decision, and differs from individual to individual.
Absolutely. And what is unique about you is that you come back to the game and you're giving it back. Whatever you learned, whatever you achieved, whatever you learned on the way while becoming a top class shooter, you're giving it back to the sport in such a big way. Which is I mean, tell us about your engagement right now with the sports. What all things are you doing? We know how
Yes.
your foundation, we'll come to that later, but apart from the foundation work.
Yeah, so I have two primary engagements for sport, and my outreach to sport and world sport is through two methods. Of course, the foundation, which I'm happy to talk about later. I am on the commission, the Athletes Commission of the International Olympic Committee. I was nominated on it, I think, in 2016. And I have actually spent a fair amount of time focusing on that as well, because I see it as a wonderful platform to be able to do something for the whole global community. And in the last few years, athlete mental health is something which is very dear to me personally, and that is something which we have focused tremendously through the IOC's Athletes Commission. We've done a lot of work over the last few years to speak out about athlete mental health, which is something which is such a stigmatized subject. Everybody has such a misconception about athletes, that athletes are very strong mentally, and that they are almost immune to any mental health illness or disorder. But it's almost to the contrary, where athletes are actually more prone to getting mental health issues or mental illnesses, just because of the cycle of life, that their life cycle that they have, and the way an athlete's life in today's day and age is. So there's constant travel, there is constant success, there's constant failure, there is stress on the body with physiological stress of training, there's of course pressure of competition, there's expectation, there's an impending end of a career, there is career transition. So all these are possible triggers where athletes could really suffer mentally. So we've done a tremendous amount of work in the last couple of years to start to destigmatize athlete mental health, where we've really launched a whole program to destigmatize this, and making athletes and the whole ecosystem around the athlete more aware of this subject, and be more willing to talk about it and seek help if necessary. We've also worked very, very hard to actually make some resources available for athletes. Athletes get physically tested and every year, right? They go through a whole physical analysis at the start of a season, but there has never been a mental analysis on how the athlete's mental health is. So we've actually created scientific papers and tests where you can actually assess the mental health of an athlete. There is an athlete mental health assessment tool which has recently been published in the British Journal for Sports Medicine, the BJSM, and also athlete mental health recognition tool, where even the athlete can take that test or analysis on his own, or a family member can take it for him, or a coach can take it for him. Then, of course, we are working very hard to actually create resources where coaches, support staff can enter a course. We are going to be launching a certification and diploma course on athlete mental health, so that we actually build the resources in the ecosystem who are professionals in this particular subject. And finally, we are in the process of delivering an athlete mental health toolkit, which has a lot of these resources packaged for sports organizations, sports bodies, and sports associations to really put it into play in their various organizations. So a tremendous amount of work has gone on there, and I've spent quite a lot of time in the last couple of years working on that, and it is a very important subject, and I'm glad to see that we are making good progress in that in this very important field.
Abhinav, it's that toolkit, for that, for the mental setup and all. It's not going to be only for the athletes, I can assure you. This pandemic has hit us so bad. A lot of normal people or non-athletes would also require
Yeah.
your toolkit. Your
No, I think you make a good point. I think the pandemic has actually, of course, it has been challenging for everybody, but the silver lining in it has almost destigmatized this whole mental health thing a little bit, because many people have suffered. Many people have experienced mental agony and mental pain and mental issues, and you can relate to this topic suddenly much more than maybe previously, when life was just carrying on in its own way. But it has the silver lining of this challenging period has been the destigmatization to a great degree on mental health, and of course that has also infiltrated into the sporting ecosystem across the world.
Absolutely, and then your through your foundation, which is the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, which is doing a phenomenal job. Not only putting the shooters together. Can you just
Well,
tell us the
yeah.
activities of your foundation?
Yeah, so again, the primary outreach to sport in domestically, what I am involved in is through my foundation, the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, and we have a few various pillars that we are working on. The first number one pillar is, of course, sports science and sports medicine. That is something which I used so much in my sports career, using the most advanced technologies from across the world during my sports career, and working on that 1% edge that athletes need to win at the Olympic level. And that is why we set up these centers. We have 6 of them now, and called the Abhinav Bindra Targeting Performance Centers, which has brought in global best practice, of course, in performance enhancement, but also in injury prevention and injury management. Um, through these centers, we have a scholarship program for young athletes called the STEAM Scholarship Program, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Analytics, and Medicine. And we try and bring all those elements into athletes training. Uh, my primary goal is to work with athletes, grassroots level athletes. So all these scholarships are given to athletes from the ages of 11 to 16 or 17, because I truly believe that these interventions and best practice actually has to come in at a very young age, and it has to be brought in into the whole ecosystem at a very grassroots level system. Everybody all thinks the opposite, that this is the last 1% edge and it is only meant for the elite athletes. I have a completely contrary view, and I believe that it actually, to make a change in India, we have to change, educate the whole ecosystem, and that education is not just about athletes, it's also about the coaches. They too need to understand the importance of all these aspects and experience all these aspects, so that they get more empowered to be more open about using sports science, using technology to enable their training of their athletes. So when we work with the grassroots level athletes, we do have a chance to actually make an impact on the whole ecosystem of sport in India in this in the scientific and the sports science field. So that is one pillar of the foundation. The second pillar of the foundation is education, where we've
Yes.
just recently launched this Abhinav Bindra Sports Medicine and Research Institute in Bhubaneswar, which we will be starting with bachelor's courses in physiotherapy. uh, that is a very important element, and we are going to keep enhancing our courses, but again bringing in global best practice. We have a wonderful visiting faculty from all across the world who are really the top people from across the world, who would be giving these lectures, guest lectures to in various elements to these young students. So that is one aspect of the education. The other aspect of education is on psychological safety. It is again
Yeah.
very important. When we talked about mental health, and if we really want to work on mental health of athletes, it's not just the athletes. It is about creating environments which in the whole sporting ecosystem, which are psychologically safe for the athletes, which are psychologically safe for the coaches. So we've just recently launched a few series. We've worked very closely with the whole ecosystem in Madhya Pradesh, for example, where we have an ongoing course for athlete mental health for not just their athletes, but also for their leadership, the
Yeah.
administrators, because they too need to learn on how to communicate with an athlete. They too need to learn how to get the best out of their athlete. They too need to learn what language to use with the athlete, which is psychologically safe and which brings out the best in the athlete. So psychological athlete safety is the other element of education which we are really working on. We've done it with Madhya Pradesh, we've done it with Orissa, and we're going to be taking this forward now. The next series will be for all the various academies that my foundation is working with. So that is an ongoing purpose. The third element of education is something which I've partnered with the ELMS Foundation, the ELMS Foundation, which was founded by Vita and Jalajdani, uh, where we launched earlier this year, at the start of the pandemic, a course for sports administrators, for sports
Okay.
leadership.
Yeah.
Often in India we have talked about the lack of quality administration. We there are so many horror stories going on for decades, and sometimes they continue to, official apathy continues in many sports. But what do we do about it? We have to do something about it. It's not just enough to talk about it. So what the intention of this course was to bring in again global best practice to actually empower our administrators. So we had about 20 or 30 odd people from the Sports Authority of India joining in. We had about many people from various sports federations and various state governments joining in, and we had again a very top, a good faculty. We partnered with the University of Loughborough, which is the best sports university, rated the sports university. So the first course, the first batch is a good success, and with the ENS Foundation, with their support, we will continue this journey as well. And the third and the most interesting for me personally, the third um, pillar of my foundation is using the power of sport for social upliftment. So this is what we started a program called Make a Mark. This is a partnership in association with a long time competitor of mine, a rival of mine, Nicolo Campriani from Italy, three-time Olympic champion. We are now very good friends. We were not so friendly when we were competitors, to be honest. But he retired as well in Rio, so we retired at the same time. And now he works for the International Olympic Committee for a few years, and we met, and we started a program inspired by the first ever international refugee team which took part at the 2016 Olympic Games. These are people who have had tremendous hardships in their life because of various reasons their countries have faced, and have, of course, become refugees and have gone through immense hardship. And now we are using the power of sport to try and make a difference in their lives. So Nico is based in Lausanne in Switzerland at the IOC, where the IOC headquarters are, and we launched. We did a selection of 25 refugees in that locality and picked 3 refugees to train in the sport of shooting to make it to the international refugee team at Tokyo 2020. I'm very happy to tell you that within a very short period of time, 2 of these 3 athletes have already achieved the minimum qualifying score, which makes them eligible to be in the pool for for participation at Tokyo. Their final decision, of course, for their participation will be taken by the executive board of the IOC next year. But of course, they have made tremendous progress and they train every day with a lot of motivation. And we are quite confident that a couple of them will actually make it to Tokyo. But whether they make it to Tokyo or not is immaterial, because what we have tried, what we wanted to achieve has already been achieved. We have used the power of sport to influence their lives in a positive way. When they started the sport, they were very closed people. They were almost sad about their whole situation. But now there is a spark in their eyes. They have a goal in mind. They have a goal in sight, and a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and motivation, and of course using the power of sport to do something. So that is the program, which is very interesting and very close to me personally. I have spent a lot of time in it as well. And if you're interested, you must log on to the Olympic channel and watch this. There's a series which has been built on them. The Olympic channel followed their entire journey so far. There is a series which is called Taking Refuge, and it has documented their whole journey so far in sport very beautifully, and it is something which is very inspiring. So whenever you do have the time, do give it a watch.
Definitely, definitely. And you know what I really like about your foundation work is you're not only focusing on the end products. You're going at the grassroots level, spotting the champions, the future champions, giving them scholarship, making them feel secure, giving them the job security, the social security you talked about. These are phenomenal things. And how many sports people in India are willing to give it back to the sport the way you're doing? And that's why I call you the best athlete, you know.
No, no, thank you. I do know that many athletes are trying to give the bit in their own ways. Everybody has a different outlook towards the whole scenario, and I respect everybody for all their contributions. But this is what I feel is something which I can contribute in, and I can make a small impact in. Of course, it is a challenging journey when you do run a foundation, and we do not have unlimited resources, but we are working hard to do our best and do whatever it takes to enable all these programs. So it is a fascinating journey, and this continues to be a sport. As I said, I'm no longer a competitor. I don't even follow sport so much anymore, but this is my outreach, and this is how I continue to remain connected to sport.
No, one good thing is that I'm not underestimating what other sports people are doing, but trying to create an ecosystem, and that too in a country like India, and getting all the possible resources from all over the world. I mean, a small example I'll give you, Abhinav. If someone wants to do sports management, they all go to Euro countries, and they go to America, wherever they go to Australia. But here we are. There's a foundation which is going to give you that degree. I remember there was an effort from the government also at some point to include Indian sports service, like Indian administrative service, Indian police service, Indian foreign service. So they wanted Indian administrative service for sports, but it didn't see the light of the day, unfortunately, in the parliament. But this is what you have already started. You're so forward thinking. You're such a visionary, which is what it makes you so special, Abhinav.
Thank you for your kind words.
No, no, really, it's really, really creating that ecosystem you talked about, which is so important, because at some level we feel we need more people supporting you, but where is it going? And you have given them that direction, that getting those people together. But even you're in touch with the IOC, the top athletes. That has also helped your cause, isn't it, Abhinav? Don't you think, creating what you've created through your foundation?
Well, of course, the International Olympic Committee is the world's most premier sporting body. I mean, it has a great network. You get to meet a lot of top people from across various fields, and of course, I'm very blessed to be a part of that organization. And it is a platform which allows me to do to be engaged in interesting work. I do try my best to give my best to it.
Absolutely, and I hope your effort continues to give take us to higher platforms in days to come. But your educational business administration degree also may have helped your thought process in doing what you're doing.
To a certain degree, but I think at the end of it, I think more than anything, you do require practical experience. And my transition out of sport has been something which has been very interesting. We often talk about career transition and how challenging it is, but this is something I think one of the few good things that I did in my career. I don't think I did much well, but this was one element that I actually did well, and I think I succeeded in was this transition because I prepared for this transition, and I was mentally prepared to move on from sport because when you are an active athlete, your life is very different. Everything revolves around the athlete. The athlete is at the heart and center of every activity. And when you do move on from sport, and careers in sport end very abruptly, from one day to the other, that life is over. And then, the sportsman's life is so unique because we have two lives almost, one as an active athlete and when real life starts. When real life starts, you have to be prepared for it because it is so very different from when you were an active athlete. So I was quite prepared for it mentally. My decision to retire from sport was not an abrupt one. I was quite clear going into the Olympics in 2016, almost in 2013, that this will be my last event and it will be my last sporting engagement and participation. So I was mentally prepared for it, and I was mentally prepared for the transition. It requires a great amount of adaptability to make that transition and to try and make that transition seamlessly. But again, you can use the learnings from sport to actually use those traits that you build as an active athlete to actually help you in this transition. Adaptability is something which athletes require every single day when they perform on the field of play. And when you are trying to make this career transition, it is all about adaptability. Your life is not going to be about yourself anymore. To move from
Yeah.
A to B, which in an athlete, like to move from one goal to the other, is totally dependent on the athlete. But in life and in work life, when you want to move from A to B, you are dependent on a lot of things coming together. There are a lot of moving parts which have to come together to move from just A to B. You do require a lot of patience, which again, sport teaches you to be patient. And in real life and in work life, sometimes you do require a great amount of patience. And of course, it is about leading that life, being committed to the journey. And those are all those lessons that I learned in sport that I use in regular life. So more than my degree, I think it is the experiences that I learned, of course, after my sports career, which I continue to learn. But I think also the experiences that I learned along the way on the field of play when I had difficult moments and when I had to deal with critical situations are probably even more valuable than just a degree in business, which helped me today.
But don't you think we should have sports as a compulsory subject at school level?
I think sport has to play a more meaningful part in the whole education thing. But what I do believe, and maybe contrary to a lot of other people, at least in India, that all our athletes actually must get quality education, and athletes, even when competing, must have dual careers planned. Because when you have, and now in India, the great thing what we have in India is that we have many more young people now getting involved in sport. We have this program, the Khelo India program, for example, which is enabling many more young people to take up sport and to take up sport more seriously. But which is fantastic, which I like. However, there is also a challenge associated to it and a crisis, possible crisis associated to it, because when you have more people involved in sport, you will also have more people failing in this endeavor, because that is just the nature of sport. In sport, you will fail more than you succeed. So we have to also prepare these people in a way where you give them a quality education, you skill them up for something after their sports career. It doesn't need to happen at the same intensity of time that normal people have, but making sure that they have an education, which may take 10 years to complete, but that's okay. But they must have an education, and they must be skilled up in something outside of sport. This added, if we are able to set this platform and this program together, our athletes will also be more successful as athletes, because they will have a degree of balance in their lives. They will have a degree of comfort in their mind, that their performance, that their last shot on the shooting range is not what is going to define them as human beings, because that puts a lot of pressure on people. And when they have a strong enough mechanism to have that internal security to fall back on, they will actually end up performing better as athletes. So this is something which I think the whole ecosystem in India involved in sport must take into consideration much more seriously, because this will enable us to have more success as in sport, in terms of medals and victories. But also we will be working as responsible organizations involved in sport, who are looking after all these athletes and have their, we can't just look at them as a product, which we look at them for 5 or 10 years, and then when their sports career is over, that's it. We cannot look at them just as a commodity. We have to look at them as human beings. And when we start to do that, we have to look at this aspect of education and skilling them up much more deeply.
Don't you think that former sports persons should also get into administration after they retire? They should also keep that option open, because
Well,
they
if
have
their
good.
heart, of course, I think if their heart is in it, if they think that they can contribute to it with all sincerity and honesty,
Yeah,
and the right, if they are in it for the right reasons, yes, I
yeah,
think they can have, they can also contribute and bring value to administration. But administration also requires certain other skills than just technical skills about sport. It requires skills about managing an organization, and those are skills that athletes also need to learn. But I think athletes can bring value in great ways, and if they have that fire to continue to remain involved in sport through that medium, then of course they also have to take a plunge. If they have to get into sports administration, they also have to be active politically, because to be a sports administrator, at the end of the day, you have to win an election. You have to get elected to that position. Nobody is going to nominate you, so you also have to be active politically. And I'm not saying this in a bad way. It's just the way it is. So you have to have that. You have to find that balance, and to be able to contribute to that. Nobody is going to parachute you into that position.
I know.
Uh,
But it happened. Abhinav, it happened when Saurav was made the president of BCCI. He didn't have to fight an election. It was a parachute drop for him, and he's doing
yeah,
a great job.
but then I think you need an intervention from highest court in everybody to
Yes,
maybe enable that, which may be challenging.
yeah. In Olympic sport, it is. It is. There's so much of rift, confrontation, conflicts we get to read, and then media is trying to, you know, uh, get embark on it, and in trying out those stories, negative stories. But coming to the negativity which is created through this pandemic, throughout the pandemic, we are facing so much of challenges. So you are also part of the International Olympic Committee. So are we going to have the Olympics next year, 2021? Is it secured?
Well, I think yes. I think the IOC is working, and of course the organizing committee in Tokyo is. They are all working overtime and working very very hard to create a safe and healthy environment for not just the athletes but all involved. It is a huge challenge because an Olympic Games is such a unique event. It is unlike an IPL where you have a limited number of athletes taking part. Here you have 10,000 or 11,500 athletes taking part. You have coaches, you have support staff coming in from all across the world, and you have so many moving parts to put together an event of that magnitude together. But of course, with time, I think we've also learned a lot about the disease, and also learned a lot about the mitigation measures that can be employed for prevention. And I think there is positive news maybe also coming emerging from a vaccine point of view. So that is, I think, good news. But I think, as the president of the IOC, Thomas Bach, said that the vaccine is not going to be the silver bullet, and it is about creating a
Yeah.
safe environment, a
Right.
safe bubble environment for the athletes. And I think we are quite confident, quietly optimistic about going about the games in Tokyo. And I think the IOC, I think, is very confident come July next year that we will see the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games and the Olympic Games will be held.
Oh, wonderful! We are keeping our fingers crossed. But before we let you go, what are your estimation? I mean, how many medals are we going to get this time?
Oh, I have no idea. As I said, I follow sport to a certain degree, but I don't watch it so closely. Of course, we've had tremendous amount of success. Our young athletes have been doing exceedingly well over the last few years, and that's fantastic. I think we go into an Olympic Games with the maximum amount of athletes who have a realistic chance of winning a medal. That is, of course, good news. Of course, it all depends on that particular day and at that particular time on what they are able to put together. But of course, it looks good. I do remain hopeful and confident that Tokyo will be our best ever Olympic performance. But of course, for our athletes, this is also, as for all athletes across the world, this has also been a very challenging time. Athletes have busy bodies, and for a long time there were lockdowns, and of course training now has resumed, but for a long period of time training was also really shut down for a bit. But now things are looking up. Most camps, national camps have started, but I think the most important thing is competition, and I think we have not reached a stage where our athletes have resumed competition. And there are certain parts of the world where competition has also started. So that also has to be taken into consideration because, being prepared in a sterile environment of training is one thing, but to be competitively ready is a completely different ball game. So this whole situation, of course, has created challenges, but I'm quite sure our athletes are up to it, up to the task, and they will be putting their best foot forward. So I wish them all the best, and I, of course, look forward to wonderful performances. But I just want to wish them well, and I just want to tell them that they have to, they have to be answerable to themselves, and they have to look themselves in the mirror every evening and ask themselves the important question: have they done it their best, and put their best foot forward with all sincerity and honesty towards their preparation for Tokyo? And if the answer is yes, they will already be winners in their own minds, and that is the best position to be in going into a games.
Absolutely. And someone like you who's behind all the preparation, guiding them, always ready to help, give his helping hand. And Abhinav, you have been such a great brand ambassador of the sport. I mean, not only shooting, for every Olympic athlete, for every athlete we have in India, you are actually the flag bearer of our country. The way you won that gold medal in 2008, I mean, that vision, that photograph is so special to so many Indians, really. And this gap because of the pandemic has not helped any athlete, but people like you, who's people like you backing this movement that will do well in Olympics, and we are going from strength to strength. And I'm sure with Abhinav Bindra at the helm of affairs, It's going to only get better because we have a golden touch here. So thanks a lot for coming on SK Live. It was really a pleasure talking to a champion like you.
Thank you.
Stay safe and help us to win more medals.
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank you very much.
thanks
Bye-bye.
a lot for coming on SK Live. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.